Good afternoon. This is the August 2nd meeting of the Hillsborough TPO Technical Advisory Committee. My name is Tony Garcia. I am going to be acting chair for our committee meeting this afternoon. As our regular chairman and vice chair are not able to attend, as member at large, I'll be this afternoon. I would like Ms. Torres to please conduct the roll call for attendance of our meeting members, please, Ms. Torres.
Sure will. And then if you wouldn't mind stating that you were in person or you're remote, just so we can see all that. Jay Collins.
Present, here, in the building.
Danny Jorgensen. It looks like I think I see Margaret Kublins. Is that correct? Is that you, Margaret?
Yes, Margaret Kublins in person for the city of Tampa.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I can't see you live, guys. Julie Ham or Mark Hudson.
Mark Hudson for Julie Ham in person.
Jonathan Scott.
Here.
Perfect. Nicole McCleary. Actually, Justin, you're a presenter today, but you could actually, well, you can't really vote because you're not there live, but you are also Nicole's backup. So I know you're on the line. Tony Garcia.
President in the
Jeff Sims is our chair. He has an excused absence today, as well as his alternate. Mike Williams also couldn't make it, but Rick Perez.
Here in the building.
Thanks for coming, Rick. Gina Evans.
Hi, I'm here. I'm in the building.
Leland Dykes.
I am here. I'm here online.
Thank you. Bob Fry or Anna Quinones.
I'm Bob Fry. I'm here. I'm online.
And I think Anna might be there too, unless you came in on her line. Anna, are you online? I'm just curious.
I am on, but I'm as a listener.
Okay. We have, Troy Tinch. Troy, I heard you called in. Is that correct? You're online?
I'm virtual, yes.
Virtual. We need to make sure that we have you as the official Temple Terrace appointee, and really it's just through an email. So that'd be great if we can get that. But thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
Absolutely.
Chris Dianutis.
Here and in person.
Nice. Michael English did call. There's Nicole McCleary, so we can add her to the attendance. Michael English is on the line. Is that correct, Mike?
I don't think he's in the list.
Okay. He's probably going to join us later.
I'm actually his alternate for THS. This is Cal Hardy.
So is this Cal Hardy?
Yeah,
okay.
I was on for a presentation, but I can count if Michael doesn't call in. I can count as his alternate for THS.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. And THS, guys, is the Tampa Historic Streetcar, for those of you who didn't know that. And Nicole Sutton or Grisel Cisneros?
This is Nicole Sutton. I'm here.
Are you live or are you?
I'm not live. I'm virtual today.
No, that's fine. It looks like we have even more than enough that came in today. So thank you for that. And Tony, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Gina. The next item on our agenda is public comment. I think I recall hearing that there is one person that wishes to make public comment. Is that correct?
So Mr. Nelson, it looks like, are you able to, did you want to speak today? And I will have to unmute you and I don't know how to do that. So Priya, would you do that?
It's done. He should be able to speak now.
Hello everybody, I'm Ron Nelson. I'm a community engagement coordinator at Edgar Connect's Early Head Start program. I was invited today by Miss Lazarus. I'm currently assisting her in her non-discrimination campaign with Planned Hillsborough. I'm glad to be present. Thank you guys for having me today.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
I am currently a resident of the Temple Terrace community. So real big into socioeconomic public policy. That's my professional background and my studies as well. So anything that you guys need assistance on, especially with diversity and inclusion, I'm your champion.
That's great to know. We thank you for your offer and definitely make sure, well, of course, you already know Dana, so I know that if you know Dana, Dana's not going to have any problem getting in contact with you because she's very proactive.
But we currently been working together for the past couple of months. So we have a great rapport. But if any of you guys would like to follow up with me as well, LinkedIn will be the best avenue.
All right, thank you very much for letting us know that LinkedIn is the best thing. We appreciate that very much and appreciate your efforts in dealing with it for the last couple of months.
No problem. It's a passion of mine. I do it for free.
As is for Dana. Oh, very good, thank you. Do you have any more comments that you'd like to share with this group at this point in time, sir?
Not currently. Let's get to business.
All right, thank you very much. That being said, our next item of interest would be the approval of our minutes from our June 7th meeting. Does anyone have any comments or motions or amendments that they want to make to the June 7th meeting minutes?
Jay Collins will make a motion to approve. Jonathan Scott, second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Jay Collins, second by Jonathan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Next item up on the agenda is item number 4. We have one action item, which is the non-discrimination and equity plan, which will be presented by Joshua Barber and Dana Lazarus from TPO staff. Josh and Dana, take it away.
Hello, board members. Thanks for joining. I just want to confirm you all can see the presentation.
Sure can.
Wonderful. I'm Josh Barber. I'm TPO staff here to present on the non-discrimination and equity plan, and I have Dana Lazarus with me as well, who is a Plan Hillsborough staff member. I want to provide a little bit of a background on this project. The Hillsborough TPO is required to adopt a Title VI and non-discrimination plan. Every 3 years is considered best practice for a plan update, and the last plan update was in 2018. As a recipient of federal dollars, the TPO is required to demonstrate compliance with civil rights law, regulations, and executive orders. With the renewed interest in equity and civil rights compliance, executive leadership of Plan Hillsborough tasked us last year to expand the non-discrimination plan to include the Hillsborough City County Planning Commission as well. And while the Federal Highway Administration does not view the Planning Commission as a subrecipient of federal dollars, the Planning Commission and the TPO do have a staff services agreement, which requires them to comply with Civil Rights Authority. And then in addition to this, the Planning Commission does benefit from federal dollars. So, the staff of the TPO are the transportation staff of the Planning Commission, and there are shared resources and staff between our agencies, which makes the expansion of this plan to cover the entire agency a reasonable and next logical step towards, advancing equity and ensuring the protection of civil rights across Hillsborough County. In addition, this expansion will help the agency better coordinate land use and transportation planning as one. It will help Plan Hillsborough speak with one voice and provide clear public service to our constituents. So I want to go over a little bit of which laws and orders are we talking about that the TPO and the Planning Commission are required to comply with. These include Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which addresses race, color, national origin. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act in 1973, which covers disability. The Highway Act of 1973 added sex as a protected class. The Age Discrimination Act added age as a protected class. And the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990 furthered the protection of disabled individuals in the provision of public services. The executive orders as well also help to define our broad non-discrimination program that includes the Executive Order on Environmental Justice, which asks us to consider the potential for disparate impacts or disproportionate burdens on low-income and minority communities, and to mitigate disproportionate impacts where they've been identified. And then the Executive Order on Limited English Proficiency in 2000, which asks us to ensure that people who are limited English proficient have equal access to our services as a public entity. And then, of course, subsequent regulations have been issued by the US DOT and its modal agencies. And so this really leads us to our broad non-discrimination insurance for the agency, that no person shall, on the grounds of their race, color, national origin, sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, income, religion, familiar status, or disability, be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be otherwise subjected to discrimination or retaliation under any of our programs or activities. And to achieve this, the TPO and the Planning Commission has a process to collect and map demographic groups across the county and identify concentrations of different groups, participate in trainings on Title VI, ensure access to those with disabilities and limited English proficiency, prevent and avoid disparate impacts and disproportionate burdens as a result of our programs and our plans, and have a complaint process to resolve complaints of discrimination where they are alleged. And so the purpose of this non-discrimination and equity plan, a draft of which is provided on our website, I hope you all have had a time to review this, is to effectively demonstrate the TPO's and the Planning Commission's compliance with non-discrimination authorities, like the ones listed before, but also to move above and beyond non-discrimination, to advance equitable processes and just outcomes above and beyond federal and state requirements. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the outline of this report and kind of walk you through what you'll find in it. It's divided into 7 parts. The first 3 parts effectively demonstrate our compliance with federal civil rights law. The next 4 parts, part 4, 5, 6, and 7, seek to advance equity and just outcomes above and beyond our federal and state requirements, and to help inform our understanding of civil rights law in the United States as well. So the first part is entitled Title VI and Non-Discrimination Components. The first section of this looks at provides a community overview and demographic maps. We use 2 methodologies to identify communities across Hillsborough County. One is a threshold method, which looks at relative concentrations of a particular group on a block group by block group basis. That helps us identify discrete locations for analysis. So, how many dollars of transportation projects are being invested in low-income communities, for example. The other methodology is dot density, where 1 dot represents 4 people, and that helps us understand the actual distribution of a particular group across the county. Section 2 looks at community engagement, access, and representation. So it provides an overview of the Plan Hillsborough strategic plan and how we've integrated equity agency-wide. It looks at how we provide services to those who are limited English proficient, as well as those with disabilities. Part 3 looks at how we evaluate our equity needs and outcomes in our planning process. This includes stuff like GIS analysis, where we do overlay analyses and then provide figures and information on the distribution of projects with our plans, but also stuff like the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model, where, we get specific EJ outputs compared to countywide. Part 4 looks at how we evaluate our outreach effectiveness. This is primarily done through the public participation plan's measures of effectiveness report, which looks at engagement in, what was called communities of concern in 2018, as well as the Plan Hillsborough annual report, which reports on outreach that was conducted agency-wide. And then section 5 looks at organizational staffing and structure. So within the auspices of Title VI and non-discrimination, what are the responsibilities of our executive directors? What's the responsibilities of the civil rights officer for the agency? And then what are the responsibilities of staff in ensuring non-discrimination and equity in our plans and our programs? Part 2 is a self-evaluation of equity work in the TPO program areas. That includes our long-range transportation planning process, our TIP, our systems and corridor planning, so safety, complete streets, transit, transportation disadvantage, as well as our public participation plan and process, regional coordination, and then our more administrative tasks as well. And just a few highlights of the work that the TPO has done in the past 3 years. The 2045 LRTP did an environmental justice analysis that found the potential for disparate health and environmental impacts as a result of increased traffic in environmental justice communities, and it identified mitigation measures for those impacts as well. The most recent TIP, the 2021-2025 TIP, which came before the board last month, looked at the distribution of project miles by funding bucket in low-income neighborhoods, in racialized neighborhoods, and ethnic neighborhoods versus countywide as well. The 2020 Vision Zero Speed Management Plan also used our Communities of Concern map from 2018 to help prioritize corridors for safety improvements and investments, and then also establish safeguards against inequitable enforcement practices, which came to the forefront of the discussion on civil rights in 2020. And then, of course, we would be remiss without mentioning the resolution on racial justice that came out of the Citizens Advisory Committee in 2020 and was subsequently passed by the TPO board the next month. And I'm going to hand it off to Dana to talk about the Planning Commission programs a little bit.
Thanks, Josh. So I did a survey of the Planning Commission's work. Some of the primary products of the Planning Commission are the comprehensive plans that they create for the jurisdictions, unincorporated Hillsborough County and the 3 cities, as well as community plans. Those community plans are housed in the livable communities element of the unincorporated Hillsborough County comprehensive plan. And they do updates to those community plans, such as the Waimama community plan update, and special area studies is directed by the Planning Commission. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights of what the Planning Commission does or has done for equity and non-discrimination. In the 2008 unincorporated county comprehensive plan, there was what was called the EDGE element, or the economically disadvantaged groups element. And this was an entire element dedicated to improving the quality of life for economically disadvantaged peoples. It included a baseline data profile report with information about housing conditions and economic conditions and zero vehicle households and things like that. So there's a lot of data in there. And then it also proposed some objectives and policies that specifically addressed the needs of specific underserved, marginalized demographics through like different policies, such as one policy, policy 1.2, says that undesirable land uses will not be geographically disproportionately located in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods, for example. Another highlight is in the 3 cities comp plans, within every element in those comp plans, there was at least 1 or 2 policies or goals or objectives that either prioritized the needs of underserved communities or addressed specific needs of a specific demographic, such as the elderly or people with disabilities. And I think that did contribute to them being recognized by the American Planning Association for addressing that social pillar of sustainability. Another highlight was the Ibor City Vision 2020 Master Plan update. This was a plan that was initiated and called for by a community group, the YCDC, Ybor City Development Corporation. And they wanted to ensure that as Ybor City grows, which it has been growing and developing, that some of that growth is guided by the needs of the local community. Finally, there was a Brandon Corridors and Mixed Use Centers pilot project that took place that implemented some really great best practices, looking at where mixed use can be concentrated, where corridors can be improved to improve bike ped safety and transit access, and improve dense development, and also therefore reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide.
And so these first three sections really strive to demonstrate how both the Planning Commission and the TPO have incorporated the principles and requirements of Title VI and the other non-discrimination authorities into our planning processes. These next four sections really strive to, like I said, advance equity above and beyond federal and state requirements. And so when we took a step back as an agency, one of the first things we really recognized we needed to do was better define equity, or identify its major components at the very least. You know, what is equity, of course? And one of the starting points, of course, is Title VI. You know, equity work is rooted in the non-discrimination authorities that have been passed since 1964. But what we recognized is that those requirements really have failed to fundamentally address the problems. You know, the basic tenet of Title VI is that no one is denied the benefits of our plans, and projects. But what that paradigm really fails to recognize is that there is a historical, there's historical and current inequities that we currently live with. And so without recognizing the existing paradigm, the existing inequity, merely not denying someone the benefits of our planning projects fails to fundamentally address the issues that we are dealing with currently. And so we really wanted to take a deep dive into what are the major components of equity. And these 5 components were developed by researcher Setha Lowe out of NYU. The big ones are, of course, distribution. So what are the distribution of the benefits and burdens of our planning projects? Of recognition, you know, what are the historical and current inequities that we see? And looking at the systems that uphold those inequities. So like, you know, failing to do an assessment of current conditions before we start prioritizing projects. The next big kind of component of equity is interaction. So the quality of our interpersonal interactions, relationships between, say, our agency and members of the public. The next major component, of course, is procedure. So that's how decisions are made, who has made them, and who is involved. And then care and repair. So the basic maintenance and upkeep of public spaces, and you know, pro-social, pro-life enhancing actions that the agency does above and beyond what we're required to do. So I think immediately of something like roadway maintenance, or even, you know, doing murals in partnership with local organizations. And so taken together, these 5 components really help us to better understand equity as a whole, but also to better tailor our recommendations and our goals as an agency. And so to help advance this recognitional component of equity that we identified, staff took a deep dive into looking at the history of discriminatory planning in Hillsborough County. You all have probably sat through this presentation before. We looked at local, state, national law and politics, stuff like the White Municipal Party here in the city of Tampa. We looked at public and private housing, so the homeowners loan corporations, residential security maps, public housing provision, and what public housing complexes were segregated and for whom and where were they located. We looked at comprehensive planning and zoning, so the first comprehensive planning documents adopted by the city and the county, and how did those reinforce and create racial segregation and lead to the conditions that we see today. Similarly, we took a deep dive into urban renewal. What were the urban renewal projects in Hillsborough County? Where were they located? What did they do? What was the public participation like them? What was the public participation for them like? And then same thing with highway construction. Where were they located? Who was involved? And what impact did those have? And I'm going to hand it off to Dana to talk about our public engagement a bit.
Thanks. So for this plan, meaningful public engagement was identified as a key component of equitable urban planning. Requirements for public engagement in planning processes have long been a typical part of the planning process, but ensuring that engagement does not passively exclude disadvantaged, marginalized people ensures that voices aren't left out, and that those who have been historically discriminated against have the opportunity to actually lead. And by ensuring that those voices are included, it helps planning and government agencies meaningfully address the actual needs and challenges that people are facing. So for this plan, we wanted to meaningfully engage people. And so we wanted to ask people about their access issues to key community elements. And so we wanted to, we asked people what their challenges are in accessing different community elements and for their ideas for solutions to address those challenges. Because people that are experiencing these issues are in the trenches know best, typically have some really good ideas of how to address those issues. So there were 4 ways for people to engage. There was a survey, there was a survey link online that people around the county could fill out. We did field outreach, so we actually had a paper survey. We had the paper survey available in Spanish and English. And during field outreach, we actually went to underserved neighborhoods, identified using those maps that Josh mentioned earlier, that again, identify the location of where people of color, high concentrations of low income people of color live, some of those environmental justice communities. So we actually went to them and verbally asked them these questions to ensure their participation. We had a storytelling forum where we got a little more information than just the quantitative data that we could collect on the survey, getting people's narrative responses to open-ended questions to get some deeper, richer information about those access issues. And we did 5 focus groups that ensured an oversampling of the 5 major underserved demographics. We had one for low-income people, one for people with disabilities, one for people identifying as LGBTQ, and then one for Black or African-American people, and one for Hispanic or Latino people, to again ensure an oversampling, so that we ensure that we heard from those folks during this process. We also leveraged and really leaned on community partnership. We had a lot of fantastic community organizations help us with this process. We partnered with the Corporation to Develop Communities of Tampa, the Raimama CDC and Enterprising Latinas, Metro Inclusive Health. We had some great engagement from an organization called 200 Muslim Women Who Care. We had some assistance from the USF MERP program. Dr. Ursing Spring class helped us analyze some of the data and more. Next slide, please. So the results of this public engagement process illuminated several key themes and the challenges and solutions that people face in accessing transportation, housing, other important community elements, and public engagement opportunities. So overall, people feel that more attention is being paid to, and investment is being made in wealthy white communities, more so than in underserved communities. So that was really the underlying major theme, is that people feel that communities in Tampa and across Hillsborough County are very segregated, and that certain wealthier and communities that are primarily white are getting more investment and more attention. So the primary kind of overall solution was, of course, an increased investment in low-income communities, especially historically underserved groups, like specifically historically Black communities. So some of the key themes within that broader issue included a lack of quality, safe, affordable transportation options and the burdens that car dependence has on people's mental health and overall ability to live. Another major theme, a lack of affordable housing, particularly in the places that people actually want to live, which happens to be within dense urban cores, and some of the gentrification and displacement that is happening as people move into those dense urban cores, and the rising housing market, as well as a lack of trust in the government due to the observation that the government is not putting enough time and effort into engaging the hard to reach people and is not making tangible changes based on what people are asking for. So some key solutions that people proposed included investing in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and investing in the bus system first, particularly because people already utilize the bus, and there were routes that already existed that people know how to use and are using, and so a lot of people were asking that we really invest meaningfully in the bus system, as well as investing in traffic calming design. In particular, speed bumps were a major theme. A lot of people asked for speed bumps. Another key theme is ensuring that we are building our cities in a way that is dense and walkable. So ensuring that we are supplying key community elements like quality parks, grocery stores, and government access hubs within walking distance in key underserved neighborhoods around the county. People asked for revitalization to combat gentrification. So this means that with every investment in an underserved neighborhood's infrastructure, like again, bike lanes, filling in those sidewalk gaps, improving lighting and improving infrastructure, also comes community benefits that allow people to stay in their homes and actually benefit from those investments. So benefits like job training programs and affordable housing, and making sure that's part of like a package deal. Finally, folks had some fantastic ideas about how to better engage them. Most of those boiling down to building genuine relationships with underserved people, again, to kind of combat that lack of trust in government, and ensure a continued relationship with people throughout the planning process, as well as meeting people where they're at. So continuing with field engagement, such as door-to-door canvassing and tabling at community hotspots where people can get to in their busy lives. So those were some of the key things that we learned through this process. And these things helped us by providing a foundation of understanding for the needs and challenges and ways to address them, which we used to generate some recommendations for advancing equity, which are included as part 7 in our this non-discrimination and equity plan. So we identified 3 areas for recommendations within Plan Hillsborough. We identified some agency-wide and internal procedures recommendations. We identified recommendations specific to the transportation planning organization and some recommendations specific to our comprehensive planning process and plans. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over the agency, some of the agency-wide and internal procedures recommendations that we have created. So the first kind of area of agency-wide recommendations is in our internal hiring practices and our staff training and representation, which of course extends to our consultants who we're providing consultant opportunities to and what we're requiring consultants to do. So some of those things include not having a driver's license requirement for new hires unless they have to drive as part of the job, for example. And also not requiring people to disclose if they have a criminal inquiry or something like that. So like banning the box, for example. Diversifying the candidate pipeline, so looking to recruit at like historically Black colleges and universities, and paying community liaisons, so setting aside a part of our budget to actually hire community leaders who have an intimate knowledge of these underserved communities that can help with community engagement, as well as providing Title VI and civil rights trainings as at people's request. Another section of our internal and agency-wide procedures of those recommendations is improving our public engagement efforts. Again, so to better include and engage historically underrepresented people. So there's a ton of recommendations that we have for this section. Again, meeting people where they are, expanding educational outreach, leveraging technology. A lot of people are now used to the virtual engagement techniques, and virtual engagement allows a lot of people to participate who otherwise could not, as well as improving intergovernmental coordination and expanding our public participation plans to include both the TPO and the Planning Commission. So making sure that we're coordinating across our two internal agencies, but as well as working together across jurisdictions as well, because improving equitable outcomes is not just a one fix issue. We have to work together with all of the health agencies and jurisdictions to make sure that different policies are enacted that help people improve their quality of lives. Next slide.
So I'll talk a little bit about the recommendations that we're proposing for the TPO. I got a couple slides here. The first really big thing is, to help better understand the connection between historical racism and contemporary outcomes, to really look at improving how we evaluate our existing transportation conditions and the impacts of our plans and projects on Title VI and EJ communities. So that includes stuff like looking at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model and the outputs that are generated from that, and asking, what are the impacts on EJ communities versus countywide for some of these areas where it's not currently reported. Continuing to expand our equity-related measures in the State of the System report. Right now, we look at stuff like air quality and crashes, but what's the next step from that? We need to look at perhaps within the line of Vision Zero, the distribution of traffic citations countywide. Looking at conducting an equity-related needs assessment for our next LRTP update. And that would really dovetail well within looking at, we're going to be doing a health impact assessment of our current LRTP come next year. So using those two processes to inform our next LRTP. When we're conducting planning studies, especially for corridors or neighborhoods, recognizing and documenting instances of historical discrimination in those neighborhoods, and going beyond just non-discrimination, but actively addressing the past harms of segregation, and discrimination in those communities through our work. And then, of course, measuring the distribution of funding and investment across EJ and Title VI areas, both in the TIP and the LRTP. The last TIP was our first attempt at that, looking at centerline miles, but continuing to expand that analysis and asking, what are the benefits and what are the burdens of these projects that we're making investments in. And then using that information to continue to prioritize and better prioritize projects in those same neighborhoods. So in the LRTP for 2045, we prioritized real choices when not driving projects, partially on the basis of proximity to communities of concern. But what about the other funding buckets, and what are the best ways to prioritize projects within those areas? Looking at how we can prioritize projects in the TIP as well. There are no equity-related prioritization standards within that, but something we'd like to integrate moving forward. And then continuing to do that in all of our other project areas like we have been doing so far, whether that's Safe Routes to Schools, Resilient Tampa Bay. It's stuff we've made headway on, but just continuing that process. We'd like to explore participatory budgeting for the LRTP and the TIP as well. Just something to ensure that we're making investments that address community needs and community requests. And then similarly for the Unified Planning Work Program, encouraging the public to request studies for their neighborhood, for the county, of what they're interested in. Not that we're going to necessarily fund it, but definitely encouraging the public to contribute and be involved in that. And then some other recommendations, continuing to refocus our efforts in Vision Zero on infrastructure and design policies and minimizing the role of enforcement as a means of achieving Vision Zero, and then enacting our equity-related enforcement measures that are in our Vision Zero program as well to ensure that low-income minority communities aren't being disproportionately targeted for Vision Zero enforcement practices. Looking at the representation of our TPO advisory committee, so considering new seats for particular individuals or groups or communities, looking at removing technical seats from non-technical committees. So trying to better have a representative section of committees that help inform the actions of our board. And then also removing barriers to committee membership. So removing the question about felony convictions as part of the application to join the committee, which has been shown to discourage those applicants. And then continuing to support multimodal transportation projects and agencies as well. And then in addition, we have some comprehensive planning recommendations. I don't want to go over those all with you, but this is a broad overview of our Title VI and our non-discrimination and equity plan. And I'm happy, and Dana is happy to take any questions and comments. And our action today that we're requesting is to approve the non-discrimination and equity plan and forward it on to the TPO board.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions or comments from members of the board?
This is Nicole Sutton. I just wanted to say that I'm really impressed with this effort, and I really feel like it captures the richness of experience and how that can actually be meaningfully translated to recommendations that can be transformative for our county. So I'm really impressed, and I thank you both and the entire team of people that put this together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
Actually, just had one question.
Sure, Nicole.
Great contribution, you guys. I felt that the study was very thorough. I did have one question. When we were talking about the survey that was online, was it provided in both English and Spanish?
The online version of the survey was only in English, but there are widgets and things that do translate those. So hopefully people, we got a lot of engagement from people who don't speak English. In another presentation I did, I showed the breakdown of those who don't speak English very well, or live in a household where someone doesn't speak English very well, that their participation, that was a question we asked on the survey. So it's somewhere around a quarter of survey participants either were limited English proficient or lived in a household that were LEP.
And then the paper survey there was a Spanish version available as well when we did field outreach, correct, Dana?
Yeah, and when we did field outreach, one of our field outreach representatives spoke fluent Spanish and was able to get a lot of survey responses and engagement from Spanish-speaking people.
Thank you for the answer. One thing I would just suggest is maybe trying to have the survey online in Spanish.
I had a little trouble understanding.
I'd say one thing in the future is just try to have possibly the survey online in Spanish as well.
Yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
There, anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, I'll go ahead, Margaret.
I just have one other comment, and I'd like to say I appreciate how much detail is in there and the recommendations, because it is very important for us to have the engagement with the community, have the feedback, and help assist broadening the capability of bringing governmental services to more people. So thank you very much for the detail.
We really tried to we really tried to be as transparent as we could and provide you all with everything we've heard and everything we did. So I'm glad it was appreciated.
Yeah, and oh, if I may, I just want to also thank Ron Nelson for coming and giving public comment today. His father and grandmother were actually displaced from Central Avenue during urban renewal back in the day. So really appreciate his input and his engagement. And this was a really important process so that we could actually hear from people who did live through urban renewal and see, you know, what kinds of issues that they're dealing with today and what that was like, what that experience was like, and how we can avoid doing stuff like that moving forward. So thanks again, Ron, for coming today.
Yeah, we appreciated his comments at the beginning of our meeting and really enjoyed hearing, you know, he's very complimentary of the last couple of months of working with you, Dana, as well, and shares your passion in this particular subject. But I also want to add to you and Josh, thank you guys for all the hard work and research that you did. I know from my past experience how much work goes into this and how much history there is to unearth dealing with this particular topic. So I really appreciate both of y'all's efforts on this, and I know that you've made quite a few presentations, and we'll continue to make some presentations and share this with some other entities in the ensuing months ahead. So, if there are no other comments or questions, I would like to ask if you could put up that last slide, because that really has the entertainment of the functionality that I would request.
Can you all see it? Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not a presenter anymore, but the requested action is to approve the 2021 Non-Discrimination and Equity Plan and forward it to the TPO board.
Okay, great. So would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved. Second.
Who made the?
Mark Morrison, City President.
And Jay Collins made second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Thank you all very much. That concludes that particular item. That's the only action item we had on the agenda. We have two status reports. First one is the Heights Mobility Study Next Steps to be presented by FDOT Tampa and ARC representatives.
I just made Craig the presenter, and Josh, I couldn't get your name fast enough on this to do that, but thank you guys for taking action without seeing the verbiage.
Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having us. My name is Craig Fox. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation, and we're here to present myself along with Cal Hardy and Justin Willits with Cal Hardy, of course, with the City of Tampa, is here to present an update on the Heights Mobility Study. And excuse me if my voice sounds a little off, but just recovering from a cold here. All right, so let's begin. So the project limits are along Tampa Street and Florida Avenue. They extend from Tyler Street on the southern end, and they go north. Just for the laser pointer to make it. So Tyler Street on the southern end, and they go north to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard on the northern end. The study purpose is to provide safe, efficient mobility to complement the character of the community, balance local and regional needs, and provide mobility options for all mode users. Now, something that's near and dear to the department recently has been the vital few, and that is a renewed focus on improving safety, enhancing mobility, and inspiring innovation. The top left image here shows a breakdown of crashes along the corridor. So you see the high percentages are angle crashes, around 20% are pedestrian, and then the next highest percentage are rear end crashes. So some ways that we're addressing this is to involve speed management. One thing along the corridors is also limited pedestrian crossing opportunities. We're looking to enhance those. And there's also sightline issues at unsignalized intersections. From a mobility perspective, there are substandard bike facilities. There's also a high level of existing transit demand, and there's potential for future premium transit. And I'll lend it over to Justin to discuss the transit.
Thanks, Craig. Confirming you guys can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I'll make this pretty quick, but this slide really just wanted to give everybody a snapshot of the existing transit service along the corridor. Where we have about 9 vehicles per peak hour traveling along a small segment of the corridor, but we really just wanted to show the number of passengers per hour that we're moving during the peak hours in either direction. It's anywhere from 73 to 180 on our existing 3 routes. You can see Route 1 carries the bulk of those riders from downtown north all the way up to Fletcher and then University area. Route 5 and 6 carry a lower amount, but when you kind of add all those up, you can see that there's a lot of transit demand in the corridor. And the numbers, anticipated numbers for the fully built BRT are even higher than that. Next slide. A lot of coordination efforts on this corridor that most of you are probably pretty familiar with. We are planning to jump into the guideway that is built for the streetcar extension. We're kind of keeping a couple different options open that we can kind of get into a little bit later about how to share that guideway with the streetcar extension. But we've got some shorter term improvements to talk about, and then the kind of the big picture fully built BRT and streetcar network would work pretty seamlessly on the same guideway from Palm Avenue south all the way to Jackson Street. Next slide. Just a little refresher, we started with 17 different alternatives and kind of vetted those to get to what we think is the best solution. The 3 final candidates out of those top 17 were starting on Florida Avenue and Tampa Street in downtown, going up and crossing over at 3 different places. Palm was the first one, and then Waters was the second, and Linebaugh was the third. Based on some detailed analysis and alternatives and using our different measures, we had eliminated Palm because of the duplication with the existing BRT light service of the Metro Rapid on Nebraska. And then Linebaugh scored slightly higher which we were pretty happy because the TOD study came in a little later and looked at a lot of the parcels and a lot of the potential development along the corridor, and Linebaugh is actually the best for those purposes as well. So there's a number of reasons. Early on it scored well, and then kind of when we came and took a second look after the TOD work had been done to a certain level, it really kind of reassured us that that was the right way to go. And that's how we landed on the alignment of Florida Avenue to Linebaugh to Nebraska to Fowler Avenue. And I'll hand it back over to Craig, and then I'm sure we can all kind of share in some Q&A later if there are more questions. Thanks.
So just reviewing some of our public engagement, there were 3 public workshops held between 2017 and 2019. There were also neighborhood walk audits, presentations to neighborhood associations, tabling events, and online tools made available. For the Heart Arterial BRT, so that was, sorry, just recapping, that was for the Heights Mobility Study. For the Heart Arterial BRT study, there were 2 public workshops along with stakeholder advisory meetings and technical advisory group meetings also. From that public engagement, these are the top 5 most desired study outcomes. Number 1 was wider sidewalks, coming in at 75%, followed by more bike lanes and routes, pedestrian crossings, premium transit, and traffic calming. So now I'll go over some short-term improvements. Along Florida Ave, these following projects are in the works. Wilder Ave signal, Gideon's Ave, another signal at Idlewild, and Knollwood Street signal. Those are looking to go to construction in fiscal year 22. For Tampa Street, there's a 7th Avenue signal and also work at Chelsea Avenue. And for Nebraska Avenue, there's work at Idlewild near the Publix, Nebraska, Seaward, Janelle, and sorry, mispronounced that, and East Byron Street and 11th Ave. And those are going to take off a little bit later in fiscal year 24. And some concepts showing that work. So it's going to be everything from raised median RFBs all the way up to a full traffic signal at various locations. For the bike boulevards, there are 2 that are proposed. One on Ola Ave, that's shown in green on the left side of the screen here, and the other one is on Central Avenue, that's shown on the right side. For Ola Ave, those limits are from Palm Avenue to Broad Street. Design has begun fiscal year 21 that we're in right now, and construction is slated to begin in fiscal year 23. For Central Avenue, that design is beginning in fiscal year 22. And sorry, we actually are in fiscal year 22 now. The department's fiscal year start in July, so this is the fiscal year 22 right now. So sorry, this fiscal year with construction starting in fiscal year 24. And the project scope are to provide low stress alternatives to Florida and Tampa, provide new and improved crossings, wayfinding, and also traffic calming along those corridors. So there are some past alternatives that were looked at that just didn't move forward because of some reasons that I'll get to. The first of these alternatives was a non-motorized alternative, and the second one was a 2-way alternative. For the non-motorized alternative, you can see on the left side of the screen that involved having wider sidewalk facilities and also considered a 2-way cycle track along Florida and Tampa also. And the reason why this one was not decided to move forward was because it was not compatible with premium transit. As you can see in these alternatives, it has 2 lanes in each direction, and that would basically mean that Florida and Tampa would be reduced down. If you added premium transit on there, it of course would take up one of these lanes, which would make Florida and Tampa just one-way streets. So it wasn't that really conducive to transit. Or you could do a bad lane, but then the bus would just be stuck behind the regular traffic, and you really wouldn't get any advantages from the transit vehicles. The 2-way alternative involved converting Florida and Tampa to 2-way streets, which you see on the left here. So it's one single lane, northbound and southbound in each direction, and a center 2-way left turn lane. This one was also not compatible with premium transit because premium transit would get stuck in the single lanes. And this alternative also had the most significant impacts to automobile level of service and existing transit travel times. So the preferred alternative is shown on the screen, starting from Tampa Street. The typical section is a 12-foot path, 11-foot lane on the outside, and then an inside 10-foot lane, and a 3-foot buffer, and then the transit lane will be an 11-foot lane followed by a sidewalk as you move further east. For Florida Ave, it involves 7.5-foot walkways on both sides of the roadway, 11-foot lane, then 10-foot lane, and finally you get a 3-foot buffer again, and then you have your 11-foot transit lane. This will also provide a 10-foot sidewalk from 26th Street to Martin Luther King Boulevard. Or convert one of the general purpose lanes to an exclusive transit lane. It will provide a wide sidewalk on Florida Ave and a shared use path on Tampa Street, and allow additional pedestrian crossings and intersection safety improvements along the corridor. Now, some benefits to bicycles and pedestrians are again, those wider sidewalks that I mentioned, new crossings, increased safety at intersections, and it's also going to result in more separation from automobile traffic. So as you can see here, pedestrians that are traveling along the east side of the roadways, both at Tampa Street and Florida Avenue, there's a little bit of a buffer here now because now you have an 11-foot lane where buses are going to use, and that means the general purpose traffic is further over in these other lanes. And there's also, even with the 12-foot typical section, you also have the utility district which provides a buffer also, and 10-foot lanes in strategic locations for Florida Ave corridor. This will result in lower speeds also, since we're reducing the lanes, and also increase enhanced access to transit. Now, as far as traffic calming benefits go, the lane repurposing, that helps to calm the traffic. There's also going to be, in strategic areas, there's going to be a raised concrete separator, provide for vertical deflection. And what you notice when you talk about speeds is that when there are physical separators, whether that be raised concrete median or trees or some kind of physical elements, that's what psychologically causes the driver to slow down more than just, say, a change in speed sign. So changing the nature of the roadway would do a great deal to increase traffic calming benefits, and also more signals of pedestrian crossings. The transit benefits are pretty clear. They provide an exclusive transit lane, and it improves grading for future transit grants. So overall, part of being in a better position to go for future transit grants. Also provides space for enhanced stops with a bus rapid transit service. It also provides new pedestrian crosswalks, and it's consistent with the HART BRT and streetcar expansion plans. So on this image, one thing I want you to notice, so this is the level of service that's in the design year. This is analyzed for 2045 is a design year, what we're kind of designing towards. And as you can see on here, so you have Florida Ave at the bottom of the screen. A couple of intersections in the design year will function as F. Of course, you know, A being the best level of service, and F is kind of the worst level of service with the most congestion. So with no build alternatives, so we just left things as they are today, and didn't go forward with the projects, then you'll still have F conditions at like Scott Palm and MLK. With on Tampa Street, you're looking at quite a bit better kind of movement along that corridor with mostly C's up and down the corridor. Now, we also looked at the build condition, so with the lane repurposing, and what you'll notice is that there isn't too much of a difference. So those same intersections that were failing in existing condition, and well, in the no build condition are failing, you know, again, in the future year with a build alternative. But you don't really notice a magnificent change. So Tyler Street still operates as a C, Henderson still operates as a B, and Lake still operates as a B, even though you took away that lane. And when you look on southbound for Tampa Street, so some of these intersections are D, and going back to the no build. So you see a slight decline, but not a huge kind of decline in level of service. So the road can still function even in the build condition, even though we take away a lane and have enhanced transit and bike bed facilities. Drainage is another concern that we're looking to address with this. Along the corridor, there are multiple drainage issues. In some places, there are no inlets because the roads are just so old. So we're hoping to reduce flooding, keep pedestrians dry, because going along the corridor, once it floods in these outside lanes, and if you're a pedestrian, you can easily get splashed there. So a very uncomfortable environment like it is today. So we are planning on increased drainage to help that along. So for funding right now, we're partially funded in fiscal years 25 and 26. But that funding cannot fund the additional drainage improvements. So one thing that we're going for right now is we're looking for a US DOT raise grant for fiscal year 23. So we're looking to not only advance the funding, but also have enough funding to do the full project, including the drainage improvements in fiscal year 23. And now I'll pass it over to Cal to finish off the presentation.
Okay, can you all hear me? Okay. So in the meantime, before we kind of discussed the lane elimination, the city was working on a few different pilot projects to look at doing some dedicated bus lanes throughout the downtown area, or the urban core, I should say. Our project limits were from Tampa Street, from Twig Street to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Florida Avenue from Kennedy Boulevard to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. We developed these in-house by the city in our transportation engineering division. And our scope included repurposing general use lanes into dedicated bus lanes. We were looking to do this as a pilot, so we weren't proposing any resurfacing. We were trying to maintain the kind of use the existing laneage and then augment it with some additional striping. We were planning to physically separate the bus lane by delineator post and emphasize it with red colored pavement for transit. Next slide. So I just have a few snippets for kind of to show everybody what we were looking at for Tampa and Florida. This one is Tampa Street from Henderson Avenue to 7th Avenue. The BRT, I'll kind of go from, look at each one's, I don't know if I can point, but I'll go from like top to bottom. So the BRT pilot concept utilized right side running because basically we're trying to maintain the additional or the existing buses and like kind of do this so that they can operate with the buses that they currently have. On this one, our bus lane ends right north of I-275 to facilitate the southbound rights onto the I-275 on-ramp at K Street. So for this, we were just taking out the lane basically from Henderson all the way over to K, and then it became like a bus right turn lane. On the bottom there, that's an example of the red colored pavement. This was an iteration where we were doing red down the entirety of the lane there, and that's extremely expensive. So probably we kind of stopped doing the concept at this point. We put it on the shelf for right now, but we were planning on reducing the overall amount of red colored texture pavement because that's pretty expensive. And then we were adding delineator posts as well to separate the bus lane where you didn't have any conflicts or areas where it became like a right turn lane as well. Okay, next slide. On Florida Avenue, shown here is Madison Street to Zach Street. In this area, we're using the right side running as well. On the bottom left there, this was a shared bus and bike lane. And then you can see where it becomes a right turn lane, bus and right turn lane right there. On the north side, on the bottom, that kind of shows where the auxiliary lane develops for right turns. And then in this area, the reason why I highlighted it was just to show an area where we were proposing to take out an existing left turn lane. There is a left turn lane that goes onto Twigs and one on Zach in order to accommodate some parking, because the parking that we were proposing to take out in this area is utilized heavily by the Meridian Hotel and some other facilities there. So in this area, we're actually planning on repurposing the parking or repurposing the auxiliary lane on the west side there for parking. And the next slide. So the public workshop, we are developing a public workshop right now. It is scheduled for September 21st at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Tampa River Center at Julian B. Lane Park. That's the nice building up there on Julian B. Lane right by the bridge. So we hope everybody will come out and join us. Next, Craig, do you want me to take this one, or do you want to go over on this one?
Yeah, I can do this one.
Okay.
Thanks. So next step are to have a public workshop in September. And then we're also having the labor purposes process starts fall of 2021. The federal raise grant announcement that will occur in the fall/winter of 2021, so later on this year. And then we're going to continue coordination with the hard BRT study on the corridor north of MLK, and that study is ongoing. Now I'd like to open the floor for any questions. We also have the contact information for myself, Craig Fox, Justin Willits with Hart, and Kalahari and Alana with the City of Tampa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen. Does anyone have any questions or comments for the presenters? Yes.
I just have a point of clarification on the sections that you had proposed. I noticed that the bicycle was not specifically identified. I noticed the width were showing that they would either, a cyclist would be in a shared space, or technically they're too narrow for shared use paths. But, and that's because in parallel, you had planned to use Ola and Central as the long distance bicycle accommodation. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a little hard. Yeah, it's a little hard to hear, but from what I understood, the question was, what bicycle facilities are proposed in the alternative, and how we're mitigating that along the Florida and Tampa alternatives, correct?
Yes, basically. I just wanted to be sure that I understood.
Okay. Yeah. So because those lanes are going to be so narrow, so you're talking about a 10-foot lane, 11-foot lane. Yeah, they are too narrow for Sharrows. However, we are providing the OLAV and Central Lab, like you mentioned, bike paths to enhance that connectivity. And also, there's going to be a 12-foot shared use path along Tampa Street. There's also going to be for use also. So cyclists can use that on Tampa Street, but on Florida Avenue, there's just more geometric constraints. So there you have to, you have to divert to either Tampa Street or one of the cycle tracks. And I don't know why my video's frozen for some reason.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, Jay?
Great presentation. I had two questions for you guys. Southbound on Florida Avenue, just south of Hillsborough, but north of Wilder, there by the bakery, there's that little, basically it's not a lane departure, but it curves just slightly, the road right there. And it naturally makes people slow down unless you're on Florida Avenue already doing 55 miles an hour, you just flew through the light at Hillsborough. So I was wondering if the curve is going to be moved at all right there. And that was one. And then two, any thoughts on the infrastructure bill? And if the infrastructure bill would do anything to the timeline for these projects?
Not right now. As far as the infrastructure bill goes, of course, if we do get any kind of advance funding, that'll help. But as far as just kind of more of a practical kind of timeline, as far as for getting the project designed and then constructed, fiscal year 23 is a pretty good target if we get additional funds that can solely be for consideration to advance it. But if we do get the RISE grant, it'll about advance it to the rate that will be most desirable. And then the second question, I'm sorry, was somebody going to say something?
This is Damian Miller. Craig, if you want, I can talk a little bit about some of the things we're looking at, just in that section between Violet and, or between, just south of Hillsborough Avenue. But if you want to cover it, that's fine too.
No, yeah, you can go ahead and do it, Damian. You wouldn't mind just introduce yourself so folks know you.
Sure, yeah, Damian Miller with Tim Oliver, consultant to Hart and FDOT somehow on this project. But that next segment up, Jay, is sort of where we're looking at next. And as part of the BRT project, we're looking at ways, despite the congestion at the Hillsborough Avenue intersection with Florida Ave, finding some ways to get the bus through a little quicker. We don't know what the answer is yet because we're in the process of analyzing it now. But one idea that we're looking at is potentially having 2 northbound lanes there between sort of the end of the one-way pair section in Hillsborough, but maybe having 1 southbound lane. So if you can, I know you live around there, if you can imagine the way Nebraska works right now, where it's 2 lanes coming through the intersection and it tapers back down. And we can do that as a way to get the way for the bus to get through and stop there by the Shell station where it stops now. And then that natural curve that you're describing would almost serve as a taper for like, if you think about it as kind of an elongated bus bay where the bus merges back in. And what that would do is right now, we really only have 1 lane that's processing that traffic as it loops into the one-way pair southbound. And so we're really not changing the overall throughput of the road in there. And what we would get out of it was we'd get a more of a center turn lane that could abate some of the backup that occurs in the mornings. We could provide a left turn onto Wilder to serve the high school in the mornings where that inside lane currently comes to a screeching halt. And then maybe find a way to put in an island here or there to calm traffic and help with pedestrians crossing. So that's something that we're looking at, but we really won't know the answer on that section for a couple of months yet. And I'm sure at some point we'll be back to this committee to brief you on that next segment as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All righty, gentlemen, thank you for your time and for your information that you shared with us on this particular item. The last item that we have before us this afternoon, item B, is the storm evaluation forecast and shelter-in-place scenario study by Allison Ye.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to turn on my camera and just say hi for a moment, but it's storming really badly by USF, so I'm going to try to turn this off and back up for quick Q&A in case I get cut off. Priya, could you give control to me so I could show our website? I'm not sure how to show the screen. Okay. Are you guys seeing? Are you seeing a website right now? Yes?
We are seeing your Word document.
Okay, it's not on the right screen. Hold on.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, here we go. All right. Got it?
Yes, we see your
Okay.
we see the website.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Allison Ye with the TBO staff, and I'm going to take a break from PowerPoints this afternoon, and I'll try to be brief since you've been sitting for a while now. We just kicked off a storm evacuation study, which was approved and prioritized by the TPO board as part of our work program last year. And I have here the project landing page to show you, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But first I wanted to just give you a little bit of background. So we use, one of the ways we evaluate and plan for the resilience of our transportation system is to, of course, look at local and state evacuation plans. And these plans already have an inventory of shelters, evacuation routes, and transportation options. So we're not trying to recreate the wheel with this particular study. What we're trying to do is supplement that information by providing an analysis of the county's evacuation practices more at a planning level. So we're really especially interested in looking at areas around the country and in the region that have been able to improve their evacuation times without having to go right to expensive road widenings. So for this study, we're going to be looking at, how and where people evacuate and what mode they might be using. That might be car transit or even on foot to a shelter or just leaving the county. We're going to look at things like contraflow and alternative evacuation timing, phasing. The hope is to develop a set of bottlenecks that we can identify along evacuation routes, and then consider evacuation strategies that aren't necessarily widening, like emergency shoulder use, signal timing. Public information strategies is a big part of that as well. So we know there's a lot of information out there, and we're working really closely with our partners from the county, the city, emergency management, regional planning council, which is they're part of a statewide evacuation study, and we're actually culling that behavioral data for them for Hillsborough County. We've been working with HART, Sunshine Line, the school board as well, because they are providers during evacuations. So We are, like I mentioned earlier, analyzing behavior data from the state level. And right now we are in the very beginning of our data collection phase, and we're working with the local jurisdictions, which is why the main goal of me talking today is just to let you know that we've commenced this study, and I wanted to talk about a few ways to get involved in the process if you wanted to. So you see our project landing site here with tabs for project goals, engagement, documents, and contact. On the page currently is a evacuation map that the county has developed that you can download and print as a PDF, but it just shows you where the evacuation areas are, explains, you know, the situations where we evacuate. This will be replaced at our open house later in August with an interactive map for the public to look at. So what I wanted to, I guess, note to you today is that if you're interested in this information, the study, we're right at the beginning again, you can sign on to our email list and we'll send you updates on the study. But more importantly, we have a August 25th open house. It's going to be virtual from 4:30 to 6:30, and the registration link is live now, so you can sign up for that. It's going to be a go-to webinar. Along with that, we will be launching a survey for the public that will be open for a month and a half on the website to gather people's input on their evacuation experiences. So that in a nutshell is this study, and I'd be happy to answer more questions related to the process right now. Thank you.
Any questions from any of our board members? Allison, you did such a good job. I don't have any questions or comments.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love it if you pass the information on, but we will be doing some more social media outreach as we get closer to that date.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks very much for sharing the information with us.
Right, thank you.
All righty. That concludes the items that were on the agenda. Is there any old business or new business to discuss from any members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I move for adjournment. So we are adjourned.
If anybody needs a parking validation pass, I have a couple here. Like most of the people in the building are.
Thank you, Gina. Gina,